I honestly wish that I had a quick soundbite that could instantly communicate to you the harm of reaction content, but I don't. Reaction content is surprisingly a complicated topic, even if at a surface level, most people can see that things seem a bit sus. You have two groups that exist in the same space that want some of that juicy finite attention, that being creators and reactors. One group does all the work, while the other simply takes that work to redistribute. One puts forth risk and effort, while the other doesn't, yet they often still reap a far greater reward. But recognizing this imbalance doesn't immediately communicate who is harmed or why. I've even heard some remark, maybe it is unfair, but it is what is best for everybody. But is that true? Can the people who avoid all the work in video creation by simply hosting watch parties of other people's creations really just be helping out? Necrit is one such person who thinks so, as expressed in his video, Are Reactions Harming Channels? I'll be looking at Necrit's arguments in just a moment, but first, slot machines. This may seem like a wild tangent, but trust me, it's very important. I want you to answer a simple question. Are slot machines a good way to make money? Does your answer to this question change if I showed you someone losing a bunch of money to slots? What if I showed you someone breaking even, neither losing or gaining money? What if I showed you someone playing slots and winning a bunch of money? Still, I don't think your answer would change, and I don't think it would change even if I showed 100 people winning money on slot machines. The reason is that you have some understanding of what slot machines exist to do and how they achieve it. They obviously exist to take more money from others than they ever give back, and they would simply stop existing if they failed to achieve that. You likely know that there must be people in the world who've had their lives changed for the better by at some point winning money on slot machines. But despite this, because you understand the underlying system, you can still say that slot machines are a bad way for players to generate wealth. In fact, you may even argue that society as a whole would have been better off if slot machines had never existed, even if you acknowledge that some particular individuals would have been worse off for that. The previous example highlights why we rightly seek to judge a system as a totality rather than simply by looking at one particular individual's interaction with it. We do this because every system, good or bad, has some positives and some negatives, some winners and some losers, some advantages and some disadvantages. As a consequence, it is usually prudent to assess the underlying logic of a system to get a sense whether or not we'd be better off with or without it, given its likely overall impacts. With this understanding, you can likely see how fairly meaningless social media posts are that proclaim to have either lost, seen no impact, or gained from reactions. Short-term effects for individuals can swing positive or negative based on any number of factors in a system. So none of these sorts of posts speak of how the system of reaction content works, its underlying nature and purpose. To spoil the obvious conclusion of this video, these posts don't change that overall reaction content has a harmful effect on everyone but the reactors themselves. Reactions exist to increase the amount of time people spend watching the reactor's content and to therefore by necessity reduce the amount of time they spend doing anything else. Reactors exist to act as the middleman for the exposure natively given by social media platforms, which basically means that they work to convince algorithms to promote the reactors instead of creators. The goal of reactors is to always take more viewers away from creators than they ever inadvertently give back. Reactors will speak about how easy it all is and how much value they gain, and they're right. But this easy value that they accumulate for themselves doesn't pop into existence like magic. It is instead extracted from a wider market of creators who are trying to survive, and who are having their chances hurt by the existence of reactors. I recognize that my stance on these issues is not very palatable for some because I am in a sense telling them that Santa Claus does not exist. Who the hell wants to hear that reactions are not some sort of infinite money glitch that make it so everyone's lines can do nothing but go up? As much as I hate to be the bearer of bad news, ignoring bad news does not make the consequences of it go away. With that very long preamble out of the way, let us now start with the actual focus of this video, Necrit, as he tells us what he believes a reactor to be.
The concept is simple. A fellow creator takes your video and reacts to it, because their viewers are interested in seeing their opinion on it.
Whether or not it was his intention, I think implying that reactors are simply creators who want to express their opinion is a tad bit dishonest. Creators think of a topic and an idea related to it, then they take a risk in using their limited time and money to buy equipment, do research, write a script, record footage, edit, and so on, in order to actually create something. Reactors, conversely, just sit and watch other people do that and then take the end result and re-upload it. The first has to gamble each time that they've chosen right, and so can be sufficiently rewarded relative to the time and costs they've incurred in their creation. They are always in a spot of potentially running out of ideas or burning out from the work. The second can just steal anything already moderately successful, knowing they can always make a profit because they have no costs or risks, because someone else has already taken on that burden for them. A YouTube video can take days, weeks, months, and substantial skill to create, while a reaction will always take around the length of the original video and require no skill at all. These facts are indisputable, so it doesn't seem honest for Necrit to present both as fellows, somehow being the same. This is especially true given that the focus of Necrit's video is Asmongold, who likely hasn't opened an editing program in half a decade. But I find it more troublesome that Necrit implies that the inspiration for reaction content is to satiate viewers' need for the reactor's opinion, as if the only way that can be given is by rebroadcasting and then re-uploading the entirety of another person's creative work. I don't think Necrit wants to suggest that the best opinions are those given in real time when you haven't seen the entire video and are thus the most uninformed you can be. Does Necrit really believe that Asmongold jumped from 160 reactions in 2021 to 453 in 2022 because demand for his opinion increased? Does he really believe that Asmongold smashed that record in 2023 and will probably do so again in 2024 because Asmongold just suddenly became more opinionated? Or did Asmongold blowing up because of his rebroadcasting of the Amber Heard trial teach him that the window of acceptability for reaction content had shifted, meaning that he could freely re-upload as many videos as he wanted to expand his growth and profits? Asmongold has re-uploaded 1,200 videos by 370 creators just in the last 3 years. Necrit wants us to believe that Asmongold is in no way inspired by the conservatively estimated 12 billion impressions, 600 million views, and $2.3 million he has gotten directly from re-uploading these videos. This saying nothing of all the additional value that these reactions algorithmically generate for his other content, or that this content has enabled him to stay live far longer on Twitch, farming wealth and growth away from other creators there as well. Necrit wants us to believe that it has nothing to do with gaming the recommendation algorithm to promote his brand, even though on Twitter that is exactly what Asmongold says is the reason why he does reaction content. Every reactor, when pushed, will tell you it is about the money and growth. But Necrit can't seem to be honest about things that reactors themselves will be perfectly honest about.
You can't just blatantly say, I do it because it makes money.
Oh, I do it because it makes money.
No one ever said it didn't. That wasn't anyone's point. Their point was that that's someone else's money.
Well, I do it because it's somebody else's money.
Hell, even Necrit later in this video admits that his aspirations of being a reactor has nothing to do with giving his opinion.
So let me be the content leech for once. There are those who believe that this form of content might actually be harming the original creators. After all, the reactions are taking all the hard work from the original creator, and they are profiting off of it by simply watching it. Oftentimes, you might hear the word content leech connected to this. On top of that, people simply argue that the reactions are taking away views from the original videos.
As a summation of the objections to reaction content, this is simply poorly done. Broadly speaking, there are actually 3 categories of complaints about reaction content. The first are those that relate to ethics, or fairness if you like. The second are concerns about the impact of the reaction on the original video and the creator's channel. The third, and the thing that I am most interested in, is how reaction content as a whole impacts all creators in the market. Necrit in his video focuses exclusively on half of the second category and ignores entirely the first and third. I will personally be making reference to all 3.
But there are also others who believe that this is totally fine and that reactions are transformative.
Whether or not reactions are transformative is never addressed by Necrit again, and I honestly wish he had given it a go. The word transformative colloquially means causing a major change to something. Reactions are obviously not majorly changing a video, they are simply hosting a watch party for us. If I asked you, hey, have you seen this video? You could honestly say, yeah, I saw it on Asmongold's stream. Your friend sitting next to you on the couch while you watch Lord of the Rings may be able to stop and tell you heaps about the movie, giving you additional information, but at no point does that majorly change the movie itself. Legally speaking, nothing supports these watch parties being transformative either. You can read the ruling from the judge explaining the criteria that H3H3 had to pass to win their fair use case that also explains why other forms of reaction content would not pass. You can read Where's the Fair Use by the lawyer Jessica Vogel that covers the entire history of precedents of fair use in America. You can watch Legal Eagle be the 900th lawyer to explain this, but you don't really have to because you can just read the fair use guidelines. Transformation in a legal sense is more about the value that you leave behind in the original work. Can someone who views the new work still find value in the original? Are you purposely taking only the bare minimum of what you need for your new differentiated work to make sense? Are you trying to create something new, or merely looking for a way to copy something else? Are you targeting a different audience for a different purpose? Reactors do not know what is in the video beforehand. They are not taking some specific aspect of it for some specific purpose, and are therefore constantly showing content they have no use for. They are not making a differentiated work because all they're doing is watching a video and pausing it occasionally. When re-uploading the video to YouTube, they will frequently have the same title and thumbnail. They are so much not a differentiated work. If you read into it, fair use is incredibly weak in what it defends. There are even courts that may have ruled against H3H3 given how they've ruled in prior fair use cases. More importantly though, what Ethan created was far different than what Necrit is defending in his video and what I personally have a problem with.
But ever since my Riot MMO videos blasted off, things got a lot more interesting. I got to collect some interesting data, which I am going to present to you. And I'm going to show you how exactly people reacting to my videos affected my channel.
So hopefully you can see the problem. Necrit's interest is not in how React content farms impact the creator ecosystem. How the growing number of Asmongold-like channels spamming out 10 videos a day can impact creators' ability to survive and grow in a world of limited eyeballs, advertising space, and time to watch videos at all. It is simply, was my video impacted specifically by the re-upload of it? It is as meaningful as judging the system of slot machines based on a single spin, unless you can find a way to argue that your results can be extrapolated, but unfortunately, Necrit does not even try to.
Truth be told, there were times when I knew that people would react to my videos, so I altered the content to give people more entertainment for the reactions. Be it the easiest joke of my life about Nintendo 64 controllers. You have no idea what the universe is about, but you like MMOs, your hairline is receding, and you have a crippling fear of Nintendo 64 controllers. Or joking about people passing out. So reactions is something you can definitely play into if you do enough market research, and you know what kind of audience you are going to attract. For example, I saw Asmongold reacting to a video where people discussed Riot's MMO. In that video, they were just talking about tweets, and yet this was enough to make him react to it. Which made me realize, we actually know a lot more about the MMO than just some tweets. So I went and made that massive video with the assumption that it would be picked up outside of just League of Legends.
I find this idea more than a bit distasteful, especially considering that at no point in his video does Necrit show or establish actual benefits for his channel from reactions. Necrit's ideal world seems to be one where creators freely work to create the best content for someone else to upload so they can maintain their wealth and success. The person who then actually did the work just has to hope that the reactor's prosperity trickles down to them. You shouldn't expect at least a share of the wealth generated from your work, you should just be happy with the illusory payment of exposure. It is beyond my ability to understand why Necrit would favor a world where success is not determined by who works the hardest or is the most creative, but instead who can give the most of their work for free to the already rich and successful. He sincerely seems to believe that the more videos that Asmongold uploads and the greater his share of the online media space, the better off all the people who actually do the work to make their content will be. So if we could only convince all the reactors to upload 1,000 videos today, oh boy how easy everyone else's lives would become. Again, it's basically an infinite money glitch if you know nothing about how markets work. In fact, why even have recommendations for creators at all, when recommendations for reactors are apparently so superior in Necrit's world? The problem is that you may imagine you gain from reaction to your video, but do all of your videos fare better having to compete with the millions of reactions flooding the markets, competing with them for the finite attention available, especially when YouTube algorithmically favors channels that upload frequently and consistently over those that don't. More importantly, I don't agree with Necrit that every successful creator should see other people's creative works as an all-you-can-eat buffet that you can snatch from whenever you don't want to make something yourself. Necrit's ideas pair well with the expression that it's easier to ask forgiveness than it is to ask for permission. While I would personally argue that anyone who actually lives by this creed is a massive dick, this is still a philosophy that reactors embody wholeheartedly. Surprisingly, I've directly heard people say of Asmongold that his embodiment of this philosophy is a positive trait and not merely evidence of his disregard for others. I could imagine why Necrit does not care about such things though, because it seems in his world we should all exist for the pleasure of those already successful and just be happy for the notice.
But the question now is it worth it? Is it even beneficial to have people reacting to your videos? Or will it harm your channel? After I released my first Riot MMO video, it decently quickly hit 1 million views, after which it stopped and then it slowly crept up close to 2 millions. And during that initial burst of views as other people reacted to it, the viewer ratios stayed consistent. For example, Soda Poppin's reaction got about 50% of the original video. This became true for both the first video and the second video. S-Fan stayed consistently around 17%, and Asmongold stayed slightly below 3 times the original views, because that's just the kind of content he does. But these ratios also stayed the same when I was talking about Ghostcrawler leaving. No matter the success of the original video, the reactions always stayed consistent with the ratios relating to their own audiences. This taught me that, at least in my case, there was no way the reactions could be taking views from me. Because if this was the case, if the reactions were taking views from me, then after the new audience learned about my videos, and if you mirror that after my audience learned about the reactions, then over time, as I released more videos, people would have to avoid my videos and wait for the reactions to come out. Or in other words, my views would have to go down and the other views would have to go up. But that didn't happen, there was no funneling of viewers and everything stayed the same.
So there are surprisingly 5 levels at which Necrit is wrong in this general section. The first is, as has been made apparent before, he assumes the only thing in existence that a reaction video can negatively impact is the original video that it was made from. The second, he disregards the other ways that a reaction can potentially negatively impact the original video other than the singular way that he listed. The third, the phenomenon that he seeks to test for, that being people expecting a reaction and so skipping over the original video, in this particular context, makes no sense. The fourth level, how he is testing for this phenomenon doesn't make any sense. Lastly, the conclusions that he draws from his nonsensical analysis are not supported by the data available. So firstly, Necrit is hard locked into the idea that what reaction videos extract from is purely the original video. But obviously an Asmongold reaction can take from any of Necrit's videos. Maybe a viewer who would have ended up watching something from Necrit's back catalog is instead now watching one of the 10 videos that Asmongold ripped off today. Reactions have an impact on the entire market for content, because we are each putting out videos on the market competing with each other for the finite amount of advertising space and eyeballs that exist each day. We are seeking to inspire interest and maintain it, necessarily keeping viewers away from wherever else they would have spent their time. The platform cannot support infinite successful creators, let alone infinite Asmongold-sized creators. Asmongold spams out the reaction videos that he does to take as much of the market away from others for himself. I think an example might help, so let's take a look at Asmongold's first reaction to Necrit, which currently has 4 million views. Obviously 4 million people didn't come into existence to watch this reaction video, nor were 4 million people sitting in a back room somewhere hoping that one day that Asmongold might release this reaction video so they could animate themselves, watch it, and then go back into storage. In reality, all these people are just going about their lives, attempting to satiate the needs that led to them to seek out content in the first place. So for Asmongold to get 4 million views in this video, around 80 million impressions were given to people, 76 million of which were ignored, and 4 million that were clicked. So we can then ask, what would have happened if this reaction video did not exist? Furthermore, is a world with this reaction better or worse for the people who actually create the content that is reacted to? In answering these questions, it is important to note that people do not traditionally come to YouTube for a specific video. Views come from the recommendation algorithm or are extensions of it. Like you get recommended a video that causes you to subscribe to a creator, and so you eventually watch their videos in your sub feed, but ultimately that all stems from the recommendation at the beginning. It seems clear that YouTube's algorithm seeks to give people videos that they will want to click on, and that will keep them on the platform now and have them return later on. The algorithm's ability to achieve this goal is not made significantly better or worse because of the existence of this reaction. In the same way that Asmongold's existence in general does not make the machine learning at the heart of this algorithm better or worse either. We can therefore conclude that in a world without this reaction, roughly 80 million impressions would have gone to other videos. Videos that the algorithm believes that the people seeing those impressions would want to watch, would keep them on the platform, and even better, have them return. It would have a roughly 5% success rate, getting 4 million people to click, and so 4 million views and all the subsequent benefits, additional exposure, money, recommendations, and so on, will be spread out amongst a bunch of different content creators. So which reality is better? Asmongold getting all the native views and exposure for doing nothing at all except watching a YouTube video and re-uploading it, or those who actually do the work to create things actually getting the rewards for doing so, their videos further being specifically targeted towards those who want to watch them rather than through Asmongold, which is entirely untargeted. It's a no-brainer for me, and this is the comparison that can be made for every single reaction video that is on this platform. To reiterate, while Necrit falsely believes that his original videos cannot lose views to the reactions to them, it is more problematic that he is not considering the impact of all reaction videos on his entire catalog of content. Every single day there is a spot where his face and videos would have been shown, but he just gets edged out by a reaction video, spammed out by one of the many Asmongold-like content farms. Every single day there is a person who would have found and ended up watching his videos, but instead ends up watching one of the dozen that Asmongold released today. Every day the algorithm thinks, why give Necrit exposure? He can get out, like 3 videos a week at best? I can give that exposure to Asmongold instead. He can release 50 high quality videos in the exact same amount of time. The harm is consistent day to day, but will slowly increase over time as more and more of the market is taken up by reaction content. The algorithm seems to favor already successful channels that release more content at a consistent frequency. Therefore, those who actually create content will never be collectively as algorithmically favored as reactors who are not burdened with the costs of actual creation. Necrit is supporting a system that specifically works and desires to outcompete him in generating interest in viewers and captivating them long term. Worse, he's supporting this system knowing that he can never compete with its output unless he too finds a bunch of grunts who want to be paid in exposure to make him videos. At the end of the day, creating one-stop shops for all the best content on YouTube benefits no one but those who own those channels. As an aside, in many ways it is even worse for new creators. In ages past, successful content creators would burn out and quit, giving the chance for new creators to rise up and replace them. But now old fossils like Asmongold, who would have been outcompeted or buckled under strain years ago, can instead use reaction content to avoid all the work that normally inspires this drop-off. They can continually feast on the output of new rising star creators to maintain their current status. So that was level 1, we've got 4 more to go, so let's continue with level 2. Necrit disregards the many other ways a reaction can harm an original video than the singular one that he listed, that being that people could see the original video but then decide to skip over it in order to wait for a reaction to come out. One risk with reactions is how they may impact your video and channel in the algorithm, something fairly unpredictable. It is certainly true that someone might skip an impression for your original video in order to wait for a reaction to it, leading the algorithm to think them less interested in your videos in general. But the algorithm could also just not recommend the original video and instead recommend the reaction and the reactor's content. Worse is that some of the people who end up watching the reaction will afterwards skip over a recommendation for the original video if they're given it. I mean, why would they click it? They've already seen the original video just on a different channel. This would lessen the click-through rate for the original video and convince the algorithm that either the video isn't very good or at least it isn't to that particular viewer's interests. Having enough people see the reaction and then later skip over impressions for the original video will obviously impact how far the algorithm will spread the original video. At the end of the day, we have no ability to see how well a video would have done in the algorithm if there wasn't a duplicate competing with it. Those who own the original, therefore, just have to take it on faith that their video is doing better competing with a copy of it on another channel than it would have done exclusively if it was just on their channel. There are of course reports of spikes in viewer numbers, no change or sharp decline, but all assess short-term impact and each has to grapple with the uncertainty of never being able to see the alternate reality where the reaction didn't exist. Maybe you saw a small spike in viewers because of a reaction, but unbeknownst to you, that video then gets 10% less views every day for the rest of its life. Maybe you saw no change, but perhaps that video would have started to decline if not for the additional interest generated by that reaction. Perhaps you saw an initial drop in viewers because of the reaction, but perhaps that reaction was keeping your video longer in the algorithm, so over time you ended up gaining more viewers than you lost initially. Unfortunately, creators just vary so much in terms of what content they produce and under what conditions it releases. There is also some variation in the method and the extent to which reactors re-upload other people's content. The result is that a generalizable, controlled test of the impact of a reaction on the original video is likely impossible. At the end of the day, one of the major issues with the creator-reactor dynamic is that if you've seen the original video, you can still hypothetically find value in the reaction, as it has new material that you haven't seen. If you've seen the reaction, however, you have no reason to watch the original, as you've seen all its material. That the original creator did 100% of the work to make the original, and 99% of the work to make the React video, doesn't matter to viewers. This obvious imbalance, I think, will always give more credence to the idea that there is greater harm than benefit for the original video. But when I say this, I feel I need to stress that the dynamic between a single original video and its reaction is not my main issue with reaction content. My interest will always be on the total impact of reaction content on the entire market of creators. The third level. I actually regret calling these levels now. I guess I should have called them problems or something, but whatever. The entire basis for Necrit's analysis is his belief that if he was losing viewers to reactions, that every additional reaction made of his content would increase the amount of viewers that he's losing. This because more and more viewers will begin to skip over his videos and wait for the future reactions to watch instead. This, however, is a fairly silly assumption to base your entire video off. In the period where Asmongold reacted to 7 of Necrit's videos, not only were these reactions sometimes months apart, but during that same period, Necrit uploaded around 100 videos. This low ratio of videos to reactions would make it fairly silly for any viewer to have a belief that there was a reaction certainly forthcoming. Furthermore, implicit here is that Necrit believes that viewers are sitting around contemplating how to min-max their time watching YouTube videos. I find this very strange because I think viewers just watch the appealing videos that are recommended to them by the algorithm. There seems to be little reason to believe that there's a widespread behavior amongst viewers to look at a recommendation for a video they want to watch and to have them go, you know what, I'm gonna skip this one and wait for a reaction. Especially considering that they could just watch both. As an aside, even if Necrit's assumptions about this behavior were correct, the analysis that he's doing still wouldn't be particularly fruitful. Comparing all reactions to his content to see changes would at best only show changes to the amount of viewers being lost, not the total amount. In other words, if Necrit was losing a consistent 10% of views on each of his videos, the methodology he's using wouldn't even capture that. The fourth level, or problem, whichever you prefer, how he is testing for people skipping over the original video to watch the reaction doesn't make any sense. This is because obviously the variables that impact each original video and reaction would not remain constants. The originals and reactions are of different lengths, and of course the different topics will play better or worse on different channels. They are released at different days, at different times, they have varying amounts of other videos released alongside them, and so on. Hell, even the creators themselves and their channels can change between reactions. Amongst all the noise of confounding variables, even if there was an increase in the amount of people skipping over the original video to wait for a reaction, you wouldn't really expect to see it. This especially when just comparing the view counts in a small sample size of 7 pairs. From the outset, you should be highly skeptical of the claim that all original videos and all reactions just so happen to maintain the exact same viewership ratio. This leads finally to the fifth and final problem. To reiterate, Necrit's claim is that he knows his original videos are not losing views to reactions because the ratio of views that his original videos get compared to Asmongold's reactions remains consistent each time. In other words, if Necrit gets 100,000 views, Asmongold will get 300,000 views. If Necrit gets 200,000 views, then Asmongold will get 600,000 views every single time. He says that we'd have to see Necrit's views go down and the reactors go up for there to be any possibility of a loss. But staggeringly, if you just look at the numbers comparing Necrit's videos to Asmon's, the ratio of viewership isn't consistent at all. The ratio is in fact all over the place, ranging from Asmon getting 1.8 times as many views in one case and 4 times as many views in another case. I even did this same analysis for another creator that Asmongold has reacted to far more, Josh Strife Hayes. I of course also found a huge difference in the ratio of views between the originals and reactions. These range from Asmongold getting half as many views as the original to getting 6 times as many views. If Necrit is an honest person, it's very strange for him to make this video and at no point seek to do this analysis with another creator as well. Like, he obviously had every ability to compare other people's videos to the reactions that are done by Asmongold, but he just didn't do that, and I wonder why. On the surface, these results appear to entirely contradict Necrit's claims. But if you examine Necrit's video closely, what he actually seems to mean when he says the ratios are the same is that they exist in some undisclosed range of similarity that he has arbitrarily decided to call the same. For example, he says Asmongold got 3 times as many views, and the next time it was around the same, but the image shown on screen shows a ratio of 1.5 times as many views, not 3 times. Obviously, to most people that'd be a huge difference, but apparently not to Necrit. What is even stranger is that Necrit himself seems to at least in part acknowledge later on that there is no consistency in the viewer ratios. He talks about how 2 videos, a whole third of his sample, were not consistent, as his video did far worse and the reaction did far better. But for reasons not explained, for him, that just highlights even more how much his viewers were not impacted by the reactions. This despite saying that this very thing would be what would confirm to him that his videos were losing views to the reactions. It was honestly bewildering to listen to.
A perfect example is my quick rant about Genshin's updates. This was a quick experimental video that didn't do that well. But still, some people reacted to it, and instead of staying in their ratios, they got double the original views. And this even worked on my latest MMO video about mounts, which also didn't do that well compared to the others. But other creators still made it work on a really big scale. So it seems like it is harder to make an example where people are just blatantly stealing views.
It feels kind of petty to dogpile on, but there's also the issue that assessing things by ratio rather than total biases things in terms of similarity. If we compare a video that got 1 million views and a video that got 1.1 million views, and I said, hey, there's a 100,000 viewer difference there, that sounds big. But if you say that second video got 1.1 times the views of the first video, it doesn't sound like anything. Basically, how Necrit is speaking is specifically designed to downplay difference. Lastly, Even if we ignore every problem discussed so far, I'm still not sure how Necrit expected to see small differences. Say 1,000 people skipped over his original video and watched Asmongold's reaction video instead. Like, how did he expect to, see that? It is possible that he was aware that he'd be unable to, which would explain his conclusion, where he says,
"Did reactions harm my videos?" No, they absolutely did not. And if they did, the quote-unquote stolen views would be in single-digit percentages.
Firstly, to say something is absolute is to say it has no qualification. Therefore, if you say absolutely not and then give a qualification, that is just contradictory. More importantly, it is just annoying that he doesn't explain at all why there could be some small impact that he's unable to see. Like, did he understand at least in part that his analysis was flawed, or is he just saying this to cover his ass? To put it bluntly, it is not possible from this data alone to determine how many views the original videos would have gotten absent reactions to them existing, or how they would have fared had they not needed to compete with all the other reaction videos in the market. This is in part because Necrit's methodology was flawed, the data set was small, there were no consistent patterns, and variables likely impacting either video's success are not at all constant in each sample. If we assume that Necrit didn't just lie in his video, I think the best explanation is that Necrit had a desired conclusion and so just massaged statistical noise until he saw what he wanted to see to support it.
There was no funneling of viewers and everything stayed the same. And that's for a very obvious reason. The viewers watch people reacting for the person who's reacting, not for the original video. They may be interested in the topics, that's why sometimes better topics drive more views, but they mostly still don't care about the individual videos. With that said, sometimes the viewers care about the original video. And when that overlap happens, that's when you get people mad that you are constantly pausing the videos. So let's not say that it never happens. It's just that most of the time, the viewers are watching the person, not the video. And in most cases, without that person, they wouldn't even know that video existed.
A viewer may not care about the original video, but without it, the reaction would just suck and they wouldn't want to watch. Asmongold's old channel gives us an insight into how well he'd fare if he wasn't carried by the talents of others. Prior to his reaction empire, he released a fraction of the videos for a fraction of the audience and all the content was goddamn terrible. Limited research, next to no editing with some generic background gameplay. Does Necrit really believe that the same amount of people would care about and watch Asmongold's opinion today had he continued to give it without re-uploading other people's videos en masse? For most of the topics Asmongold speaks on, even if he independently was inspired to speak on them without some video, he wouldn't even know where to begin. Again, you're right, some of the viewers care more about the reactor than the original video, but obviously astronomically less people would know who these reactors are or care about them if they didn't have reactions to upload. The reactors re-upload other people's videos to increase their own exposure, to inspire greater interest in themselves, and to satiate people's need for entertainment. If the reactors were unable to do this, viewers necessarily would need to be presented actual creators and their videos via the algorithm. The viewers would subsequently develop an interest in those creators instead, by the very same mechanisms they came to enjoy reactors in the first place. The people who end up watching do not come into existence to watch those reactions, they are pulled away from others in the market. There are obviously other original videos in the billion on this platform that would appeal to the viewers' interests, and it is these that the reactions are seeking to compete with and ultimately win against. Supporting a system that enables some people to avoid any work and yet still outcompete you to usurp market share is not in your or anyone's best interests. No world is better where those who do the least are the most rewarded.
To put it differently, if I release a video that presents information about a video game, either people decide to watch it because they are interested in the information, or they wait and watch it for the reaction because they are interested in that reaction, not necessarily the raw information. In this case, I wouldn't be losing viewers because those viewers were not likely to watch my video in the first place. The cases where people are interested in the original video and they still wait for the reactions are very rare. And it only ever happens if the audience of the original video and of the reaction dip into each other. In that case, people just watch their preferred creator.
I think this presentation of the market and viewer knowledge is very misguided. Viewers are not perfectly rational agents with all knowledge who are equally likely to do anything regardless of the barriers to entry. In other words, people do not necessarily watch their preferred creator, they are more likely to watch whatever the algorithm presents to them. People generally take the path of least resistance, and in this case that path is created by an algorithm that favors channels that spam out 10 videos a day. Necrit seems to have this obsession with new videos and viewers waiting for reactions. People aren't just getting recommendations for newer videos, they're getting recommendations for older videos as well, in this case that being the insane horde of content that Asmongold has stolen over the last few years. Viewers don't need to wait for reactions, they already exist, and the algorithm isn't putting the original video alongside all its reactions and saying, hey, pick whichever one looks best. But even when that does happen, for anyone who's even slightly interested in the watch party experience or the opinion of the reactor, the reaction is the superior version. Even in some magical, hypothetical world where viewers always watch both the original and the reaction, you can likely still see the issue there. 50 creators each spend 1 week making one video each. Asmongold then re-uploads all 50 videos in a week because he doesn't need to spend any of the time or effort to actually make them. The result in this magical, hypothetical world, which is to some people their ideal world, is that Asmongold would have 50 times the viewership of any of those individual creators. Asmongold is a monstrous amalgamation of hundreds of creators. He always has you covered regardless of your interests. And hey, the more of him you watch, the less of anyone else who will ever be recommended to you. Which of course is Asmongold's fucking goal. When I found Josh Strive Hayes' channel, I loved his voice and style of video, so I binge-watched effectively all of his content. Eventually, I did get to the end. I ran out of videos, and you know what I did then? I moved on. There wasn't any more content to watch, so I had no choice. I was therefore served recommendations for other creators, whose content I then developed an interest in. Sure, I will still catch some of his new videos, but because I moved on to other creators, I get recommended Josh's videos less. We can now compare this very normal state of affairs to what happens for anyone who watches Asmongold, who never runs out of high-quality videos. Never. Even if a normal person dedicated their limited free time to watching every video that Asmongold uploaded, they would just forever fall behind as more videos would continue to be uploaded, so they would never reach the end. If you like Asmongold, you have the option of watching him until you literally get sick of him, something you don't necessarily get for actual creators on this platform. Asmongold and Josh's content is very similar, in some cases literally exactly the same, but Josh can never inspire as much interest and take as much market share as Asmongold can. Josh, burdened with the costs of creation, will never have sufficient output. It isn't just him. No one can have the kind of output that Asmongold has because it requires hundreds of the most talented creators working around the clock for free. Due to Asmongold's back catalog being effectively infinite, I can guarantee you that I personally watch more creators every week than anyone who likes his content. Why? Because I don't watch reactors. Consequently, not a week goes by where I'm not introduced to new creators, big and small, who I then start watching to meet my content needs. Asmongold viewers, on the other hand, don't have this experience because the lion's share of what they watch is his content, so they just keep getting recommended his infinite back catalog. His viewers have commented on my videos explaining that their recommendation algorithm is completely screwed up and they just use him as their recommendation algorithm, which just digs them further into that hole. A hardcore YouTube user like myself might watch 12 different creators in a day. Asmongold's goal is for it to just be him, which honestly isn't surprising. Actual creators want that for themselves as well. What is impressive about Asmongold though is that he's convinced a horde of people that his using them to achieve this for himself is in their best interests. Insane, I know, but it gets worse when you realize that the Necrits of the world seem to believe that their greater prosperity is tied to creating more Asmongold-like content farms trying to do this. In years past, it was insane to think that any creator would risk the backlash of making a content farm out of re-uploading other people's creative works. I was around 5 years ago and would listen to Asmongold defend himself when people would talk about his reactions on Twitch. He would say, sure, I do react to the occasional video on Twitch, but I don't post them to YouTube, that's just fan channels, that's nothing to do with me, it's not me, I swear. He knew it was scummy then, he knows it's scummy now, but it's so much money, so much growth, and it's so easy. How the times have changed. Due to the efforts of Asmongold and his followers like Necrit, the tides have turned on this issue. There will come a day where every popular video is re-uploaded 1,000 times and then, oh then finally will Necrit be in his paradise. While we have somewhat gotten sidetracked, it is important to remember that Necrit's goal was to weigh in on whether reactions are beneficial or harmful. So far, he's merely tried to argue that there's no harm, which is not the same thing as arguing that there's a benefit. In fact, a lot of what he has presented would actually be a justification for not expecting a significant benefit in terms of views on your video from a reaction. As we can see from the graphs he shows, there is no obvious magical view bump from when Asmongold reacted to his videos, and certainly if there was one, Necrit would have every reason to specifically point that out. This again highlights the abysmal click-through rate from the re-upload to the original video. So without any obvious sign of benefit, Necrit decides that he just needs to invent benefits that while he can't show them to you, you should nevertheless just trust they exist.
Because people don't realize that reactions also have some benefits. Besides the fact that sponsored videos will be better. For example, I put a Manscaped sponsorship into one of my 100k videos. which got later grabbed by other creators, and together they all multiplied the views 6 times. So they gave the sponsors just a bunch of free value.
Sponsors pay creators based on the return that they expect to get from their audience. They usually, at least initially, base their predictions on the views that their videos traditionally get. As you have no way of knowing how many reactions you will get, let alone their analytics, you can't use them to argue for some sort of higher payments. Creators need views in order to get sponsors, so obviously creators don't benefit when reactors start spamming out reactions to drive traffic to their channels instead. Before you start, I am aware what I'm saying isn't directly addressing what Necrit said. He was, after all, not trying to argue that creators themselves receive benefit, but the corporations receive benefit. It is honestly wild that this was the first thing that he brought up. Reactions are great because corporations are getting free ad views that they're not paying for, on a site where the videos are funded by the billions of ads that are played each day. Corporations are getting free ad time, guys. Reactions are great. Awful.
But there are also other hidden benefits. And although these benefits don't immediately reflect on the channel, from the long-term perspective, they are irreplaceable. Every time someone picks up your video, it spreads awareness about you. And it is this awareness that might one day save your channel. In a similar way, when you make content and that content then spreads into other audiences, in this case through reactions, you will have more people who know about your existence. And as long as they remember you, the next time they pop up in your recommendations, they will be more likely to consume your content.
If Necrit's assertion was true, that Asmongold caused people to watch other creators more, not less, his viewership would necessarily decline over time because those who routinely watch his reactions get bombarded with like 50 faces a week. Even if they only started to watch a small portion of these new faces, they would quickly run out of time to watch Asmongold at all. But this doesn't happen. Asmongold, as a middleman for exposure, does not make Google's billion-dollar algorithm more efficient at presenting people with creators that they want to watch. The exposure Asmongold gives isn't free. It comes with the middleman cost of the native exposure going to Asmongold rather than someone else, and he necessarily reduces the overall maximum amount of time that people can watch actual creators. This of course isn't unique to Asmongold. This is the cost that all reactors have as middlemen in this system. Reactors have the goal of indiscriminately convincing people to stop whatever they otherwise would be doing to watch them instead. Newsflash, they succeed in this goal. As the mechanism they grow through is the same one that creators do, the thing that they're going to impact the most is creators. They do not have the goal of convincing people to watch or do other things, and I'm tired of people pretending otherwise. Again, if they were actually successful in doing that, they'd stop reacting immediately because they'd run out of audience to push other places. Necrit's biggest problem though, is that he's not trying to argue that Asmongold's reactions make things better for creators compared to a reality where they didn't exist. He is simply trying to say, positive outcomes may happen, and to that I say, no shit. This is because every system ever implemented, if run long enough, would have some positive outcome at some point for someone. Necrit never reaches the point of arguing that Asmongold spamming out 10 videos a day leads to other creators being watched more and discoverability being higher for them than the alternative where that didn't happen. His failure to do this is similar to saying, slot machines win people money sometimes, therefore, slot machines are a great way for players to make money. It is just really obviously faulty reasoning. In the same way that you are better off never putting money in slot machines despite that you may sometimes win money, we would all be better off if reactions didn't exist, even if a tiny minority are directed from the reactor to the original creator. In both cases, by specific design of the system, the cost to us in aggregate is to be higher than any potential reward.
And this is the underappreciated result of React content. While in some cases you might argue that it is taking views away from the original videos, you can't deny that it is spreading awareness about the original creator. But it is undeniable that I can now continue doing what I loved doing because all the reactions gave me publicity, even if I traded some views for it. Without it, this channel might have been dead already. Also, I totally didn't make this video to promote my second channel, where we release all the cool stuff that we do on streams, which also might include some reactions, but we always give links to the videos. And at the end of the day, I gave people so much React content, and I made people a lot of money. So let me be the content leech for once.
Necrit's argument is the same as everyone else's when it comes to defending reaction content, but as is always the case, when the implicit premises are stated explicitly, it sounds impressively stupid. His argument is the bigger the content aggregators are, the more videos they upload, the more YouTube recommends them, and the more viewers watch them, the better off everyone else will be. All those people who actually do the labor that fuels these channels will be rewarded eventually, because the prosperity of those at the top will all trickle down to them one day. We all just need to work as hard as possible to get the algorithms to recommend reaction videos as much as possible. Give all the exposure to reaction videos, in fact. As we can trust that one day these people will stop watching reaction videos, and oh boy, when that day comes, will the people who actually do the work to make these videos finally get some views. This is clearly much better than reaction videos just not existing, and the native exposure of the platform just going directly to creators, cutting out that middleman entirely. Cause hey, as we all know, the easier it is for the rich to get richer, the better off everyone will be. In conclusion, Necrit's video is nonsensical and contradictory. This is because he's trying his hardest to avoid the reality of an obviously imbalanced and exploitative relationship. Asmongold has spent years trading off parasocial relationships, fear of reprisal, ignorance of market dynamics, and a need for validation from the famous to build his content farm. He has done this with the express goal of usurping market share away from others while expending as little effort as possible. Asmongold doesn't send viewers to other places to use their finite time, rather he pulls these viewers away from others in the market to maintain his elevated position. Every day, countless thousands of channels have their videos reacted to by Asmongold-like content farms, but they never end up sharing the pantheon with him. They remain in the dirt, which is the place this system seeks to keep them. If reactors didn't each have their horde of creators working for free, then they couldn't spam the algorithm, meaning that less people would know who they are or care about them. The algorithms, not swamped by reaction videos, would necessarily have to recommend actual creators, giving them the native exposure that was previously usurped. The result being that viewers would move on to creators that the algorithm is equally confident that they would want to watch. Reactors getting in the way of this by acting as the middleman for the native exposure on the platform helps no one but those reactors. The rich getting richer, doing less for more, does not benefit those who are left holding the bag of doing the actual work. Working for and supporting content farms in order to compete with them for viewership is a sucker's game and does nothing but hurt us all. To those who disagree with me, I ask you the same questions that I always ask that people refuse to answer. Imagine a world where YouTube had no reactions, and therefore 100% of the impressions were exposing viewers to creators that they most likely want to watch. How would taking some of these impressions away from creators in order to promote reaction content benefit original creators? What percentage of native exposure would you take away from creators to give to reactors? So maybe you'd want to give creators 40% less exposure so the algorithm has some space to get people to watch reactors instead. Just give me a number, and a reason why this change wouldn't just cause people to watch creators less. I absolutely agree, slot machines do pay you money, but you're a fool if you don't understand that what you're being paid is just a lesser amount of what is being taken from you. I want to be open and say that I dislike how much I've spoken about Asmongold in this series in general. My interest has never been in Asmongold specifically, but the phenomenon of reaction content in general. It is just that coincidentally, he has always somehow managed to be the easiest avenue in which to discuss it. Although I guess that's in part because of how much he does it and how blatant he is with it, like he has no shame. Unfortunately, I feel as though continuously bringing up Asmon plays into this idea that you can assess reaction content as a whole by looking at one reactor's impact on one particular creator, which is obviously quite silly. Moreover, I think Asmongold has always been a pretty open scumbag. He wears his pure self-interest on his sleeve, and he has openly stated that he will scam anyone if he feels he can get away with it. It isn't like Asmongold is trying to pretend to be a good person or is ignorant of how he's exploiting others. So on some level, these videos inadvertently say, hey, you know that openly bad person who his viewers think is based because he's open about being a bad person? Well, he's actually a bad person. This is not exactly an interesting revelation or something I particularly care about, but I do think this may be in part what inspires people like Necrit to try and rationalize how they are not a part of the horde that he exploits. Sure, Necrit is just one of the hundreds going on thousands of channels that Asmon farms to avoid work and to gain free wealth and growth, but Necrit isn't like those others. He's actually a very special boy that Asmon really cares about. It even seems as though Necrit aspires to be Asmongold, as at the end of the video he says he wants to be a content leech. Supporting an unjust system in the hopes of one day reaping the benefits rather than suffering the negative aspects is not unheard of. Lastly, I have to admit it is annoying to spend so many years writing on the harm of reaction content, to then see people not address any of my arguments when they make a video in favor of reaction content. Although potentially it could be impossible for a person to cover my arguments in such a video, because, you know, obviously I believe if you understood my arguments, you wouldn't want to make such a video. At the end of the day though, I do feel ill-equipped to combat the problems that I perceive. The strength of my arguments, or if I want to be arrogant, the truth, doesn't really matter. What is more important is my own influence and my skills at communication, and let's face facts, I suck at making this kind of content. I can write a great essay, but speaking it into a camera is a terrible experience for me. After completing this video, I still have another essay that I still haven't made a video on, and honestly, I think it will be my last. I finished both of these scripts 4 months ago, but it has taken me that long to read even just one into a camera. Regardless, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, I wish you all the best.